John Marks, and this is my part, what is it, 8? Part 8. Let me check and make sure it's actually part 8. Yes, part 8 of my Whispers of the Old God review, and in this part we're going to be going over Shaman. So, I believe Shaman is going to be one of the best, if not the best, class in the standard metagame. However, most people are talking about mid-range Shaman, and they're talking about the Master of Evolution thing from below and all that. I don't think mid-range Shaman's going to be the best deck. I think aggressive Shaman's going to be the best deck. Aggressive Shaman's already one of the best decks. I believe aggressive Shaman right now has 0 terrible matchups. It can beat anything, and it's pretty favored in versus a lot of things. It's not great versus some things, but it's always at least in the game, right? And this deck loses 1 card, which is Crackle, and it's going to get a few new tools in these new cards, and so I'm not sure what the optimal build's going to be, but like I'm pretty sure this will be the meta-defining deck that everyone's going to need to be able to beat, and mid-range Shaman is not going to be good against it because it's just too fast, right? Like mid-range Shaman's pretty bad versus super aggressive decks, which is what its counterpart of the aggro Shaman will be. So that's where I think Shaman will be. I do think there are lots of new exciting cards in Shaman for this expansion. Many of them are more controlling mid-range tools, which still might work. There may be some sort of what I'll call hybrid Shaman. Like in Hunter, this happened where there's pure face Hunter, then there's the mid-range Hunter, then there's this sort of hybrid Hunter, which is like more mid-rangey but still an aggressive version. I think a quote hybrid Shaman may be the best deck. Just give you a little bit more game versus the mirror. Like for example, Thing from Below, which I'll get to all the different cards, but Thing from Below is a card where I believe may fit in an aggro Shaman randomly. I don't know. I'll talk about it more as I go through the cards. And then, as usual, at the end of this review, I'm going to build a deck, which I'll probably try to build a, quote, hybrid Shaman deck, because that's what I think will be the best version. So, alright, let's go through the cards. First, Legendary. Halazal the Ascended, 4/6 for 5. Whenever your spells deal damage, restore that much health to your hero. I think this card is really good, and I think people may be thinking about this card a little bit in the wrong way, because they're thinking about like playing this in Lightning Storming and gaining some huge heal and all that, right? But the way I think about this card is it's a 5-mana 4/6, which is pretty hard to kill. It sort of has taunt, right? I mean, like, if you think about it, if I play this card and you don't kill it, what are you expecting is going to happen? Like, let's say we're playing like a, an aggro mirror, or aggro-ish mirror, and turn 5 I run this out there. Well, if you don't use 6 damage on this, it's just pretty risky, because obviously I have some spells in my deck. I put this in my deck, right? And now all of a sudden my Lava Burst effectively hits you for 5 and does me for 5, or heals me for 5, or stuff like that, right? So it kind of has taunt, like it's kind of thing they're going to want to deal with right away, and it's hard to kill. It's going to take a couple spells to kill it. So I think it's a really good card, not because of like setting up some big combo. I just think it's like a pretty good mid-range minion that's like could be a must kill. Then it also is a nice combo card too. So like, let's another situation, let's just say we have 7 mana and we play this in Lightning Bolt twice. Well, I mean, we effectively got a 4/6 heal bot, and we killed a few of their things, right? So a lot of the burn spells in Shaman are very cheap relative to how much damage they do. So I think this card's really good, and I think it's not just a control card. I think this card could actually fit in sort of the deck I'm talking about, sort of a hybrid Shaman deck, where it's a much more aggressive deck, but this is maybe your only 5-dropper, and along with Doomhammer. So good card. Interested to try it. Twilight Hammer. This card has a lot of value, but it's just kind of too expensive, and it's also just way worse than Doomhammer, so I don't think anyone will play it, at least initially. Um, yeah, I don't think it will really work. Also, like, previous card with a lot of value that's a weapon for Shaman is the Charged Hammer, which, ends up giving you a 2 damage targeted hero power, which is much better than a 4/2 elemental, and it's a, what is it, a 2/4 weapon, so it has a lot more charges and stuff. Um, that card never saw any play, so I doubt this one does either. Eternal Sentinel. This is another really good aggro Shaman tool, and any Shaman tool, I guess, but in aggro Shaman, Knife Juggler's nerfed to a 2/2, Haunted Creeper's out of the game. These are all cards people were playing in aggro Shaman, so we need more 2-drops to make up for those 2-drops that we're probably going to take out, and this one fits perfectly. People kind of stopped playing the Lava Shock for the unlock mana effect, but 2 damage isn't as strong as a 3/2, right? So the unlock mana effect's obviously going to be good in a deck with a lot of overload. A 3/2 is nice in a more aggressive deck, and so this card seems like a pretty strong card to just put in the aggro Shaman as a replacement to, like, say, Haunted Creeper. And it also will allow you to, for example, run the Ancestral Knowledge again, which people were cutting Ancestral Knowledge, then some people were playing 1, and some people still played 2 or whatever, but I think, like, when you build Shaman, you want to build it more of like a minion focus. However, once you already have this in there, then Ancestral Knowledge does become more appealing, because obviously a combo of this with Ancestral Knowledge is pretty cool. So we'll see whether Ancestral Knowledge makes a comeback or not. Obviously Crackle leaving opens up some space as well in this aggressive Shaman, but I'm pretty sure this card will be in the deck, and it's a pretty fantastic card. I mean, I think as well, like, this is basically a free 3/2 sometimes. I'm thinking in the sort of situation where, let's say you play a Flame Wreath Faithless on 4, for example. Well, then on turn 5 you can play this and still spend 3 more mana, which 3 mana is a very common amount of mana to want to spend in a Shaman deck, so, then you basically got a free 3/2, so that's nothing wrong with that. Also, it works very well with Feral Spirits as well. Play Feral Spirits on 3, then you untap with 2 mana, you can play this and then spend your other 2 mana on another minion, or worst case a totem, but, so a lot of times this is basically going to be a free 3/2, so that's pretty good. Thing from Below, this card's really interesting. Costs 1 less for each totem you've summoned. Obviously you don't want to be like sitting there hitting your totem button all game, especially if you're playing an aggro deck, but the reason I think this card will be very good is because if you lose 1 mana on this and it's a 5 mana 5/5 taunt, that's okay. I mean, if you lose 2 mana on this and it's a 4 mana 5/5 taunt, that's exceptional. So that's sort of how it looks as far as the early game, right? So if you can play 2 totems before turn 4 and then play this on turn 4, that's amazing if those totems aren't, like, really setting you back. So the totems that I'm thinking of are not just not just tapping for a totem. It's more just the Totem Golem and the Tuskar Totemic, right? So if we can play 2 of Tuskar Totemic and Totem Golem by turn 4, and then we can play this on turn 4, that seems really good, right? Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, even later in the game, every tap you totem effectively takes a mana off this. So let's say we've played a Totem Golem and we've played a Tuskar Totemic kind of in the earlier game, and then we've done some other stuff on turns 4 and 5 and stuff, and it's a little later in the game. Well, another tap takes this to 3 mana, so it's effectively making your totem, or you're making your hero power 1 mana for the turn you play it, right? So, let's say I've played a few totems earlier in the game and then I draw this. Well, maybe on turn, let's say 5, I can totem and then play this, and then that's even better, So, like, I think this card's really good, and I will be trying to make this work in a more aggro Shaman. I think more aggressive Shaman's the way to go, but I still think that the aggro Shaman is going to turn into very much like sort of a zoo deck. So the reason why the zoo deck was so powerful is because you swarm the board early with all these small minions, and then you have the potential to just build these huge like Sea Giants or Gormok the Impaler, or you get these big tempo plays later in the game, and so even though you're an early game aggressive deck, you're also a late game deck because you have a lot of big late game cards too, right? So I'm looking at Shaman as sort of the same with this Thing from Below and the Flame Wreath Faceless, um, the Halazal, the Ascended stuff. Like, you can play a super aggressive deck that still has some kind of big late game hitters, and in a lot of cases you can play those big late game hitters pretty early. Um, I'm excited to try this card. I think it's really good. I think it synergizes super well with Tuskar Totemic and Totem Golem, which are already both really good sort of early board cards, and this is another early board card in my mind. I would say your plan should be to play this on turn 4 or 5, and it's kind of hard to line up the mana somewhat, right? Because if you play Totem Golem on 2, then you can't necessarily play a Feral Spirit on 3, or not a Feral Spirit, I mean a Tuskar Totemic, so it's hard to get two of these, two totems out there off of those before turn 4. Maybe you can play 2 Totem Golems, but then you have another Overload, so you couldn't play this on 4. So it seems like it's more likely this is going to be like a turn 5 play, but if you can play those 2 cards, like let's say you play Totem Golem on 2, and then maybe you Tuskar Totemic and Lightning Bolt or something on another turn, on turn 4, well then turn 5, even with the Overload, you could play this for 4, you know what I mean? Or like, if you got the coin and you coined out a Totem Golem, then this lines up perfectly on a 4 with coin Totem Golem into 1-drop, into Tuskar Totemic, into this on 4. That lines up really well too. Alternately, like you can, like I said before, line it up with a Totem on 5, so you can do something along the lines of, let's say you do the similar opening, Totem Golem into random 2-drop, into Tuskar Totemic Lightning Bolt, then play this on 5, or Totem Golem into random 2-drop, into, let's say, not overloading on turn 4, and then Totem this on 5. So I think turn 5, turn 4, getting this out, pretty good. Also, one last point, you certainly can play it on later turns for even cheaper, right? Like, let's say you do actually tap once or twice because you didn't have a perfect draw, right? So let's say maybe you Totem Golem, or you Totem Golemed, and then you like played a random card, and then on turn 4 you had to like tap and Rockbiter or something, and then maybe on turn 5 you played Flame Wreath Faceless and tapped, right? Well, now at this point you've had 3 totems. This is a 3-mana card, so on 6 you're going to have 2 Overload, you're going to have a 3-mana Master Revolution with another tap, so you can tap and then play a 2-mana Master Revolution on 6. So, I mean, you effectively got all the mana back for all those taps, It's really, really interesting to think about. Anyways, I'll move on since I've been talking about this for 10 years. Alright, so Master Revolution, this card's definitely really interesting, and the downside's just a Yeti, which is pretty good. My main comment about this card is I don't think it's as good as Flame Wreath Faceless on 4, so I don't think you can play more than... I don't think you're going to end up playing 2 of these. It's definitely more like a mid-range Shaman card, but even in a mid-range Shaman, a 7/7 for 4 mana just kind of, for me, overshadows this quite a bit. The Evolve mechanic, transforming a friendly minion into a random minion that costs 1 more, is definitely cool, and it's definitely tricky. In order for it to really work, you need to have a board, and if you have a board, yeah, I mean, this is a good card. Evolving a thing from below is also a thing, no pun intended. So that's really cool. You get a discounted thing from below and then you evolve it. Evolving a Flame Wraith Faceless sucks, though. Evolving a Feral Spirit token isn't great. Evolving a Totem Golem isn't great. Like, you have all these cards that a lot of cards that you're getting that are better than their mana costs. You don't want to evolve those kind of cards. You want to evolve cards like the thing from below. So, I mean, this card's still a really good card and another card that could be experimented with. Even in a more early game board centric Shaman, this card might fit, right? Like you might be able to do the whole plan may just be to evolve the thing from below. I mean, you get a 5/5 taunt. It's reasonably likely to stick a turn. You attack something and then you evolve it. That seems amazing if you can pull that off. Not sure it will ever happen. Or Master of Evolution it. The next card is Evolve, which is evolve all your minions, transform your minions into random minions that cost 1 more. Really interesting effect. I don't think this is good, and the reason I don't think this is good is because, so how do you get the most value from this? You get the most value from this by creating a wide board. And how do you get a wide board? You get a wide board by using tokens or small minions or stuff like that, right? So if you manage to get a bunch of small minions, I just think I'd rather have Flame Tongue Totem than this, and Flame Tongue Totem is much more consistent in figuring out how to use all those small minions. This, you get a bunch of random minions, who knows what they are, maybe you randomly get a Doomsayer and screw yourself, who knows. It doesn't seem like it's great, but it's definitely really fun, and I like everyone else will probably try to evolve an Onyxia to get like, a random 10 mana card and a bunch of random 2 mana cards on turn 10. But I think it's more of just a fun card than it is a good card. Just okay. This card seems excellent. It's a 4 mana 7/7 overload 2, so it's basically a 6 mana 7/7. If it was 6 mana straight up for a 7/7, that's pretty good, right? Like most times you would compare it to Boulder Fist, which is a 6/7 for 6. So it's a little better than that. However, the fact that it's a 4 mana, it's basically similar to like a Fel Reaver, where like you're playing this aggro deck, and then you just play this. Now, the reason this is a little rough is, so when you're playing aggro Shaman, your most common turn 3 play is Feral Spirits, which means you're generally overloaded on 4, and you definitely normally want to play Doomhammer on 5, which if you play this on 4, you can't play Doomhammer on 5. So that's the downside of it. But the upside of it is you don't always get the perfect draw, right? And so if hypothetically you play Tuskar Totemic on 3 instead of Feral Spirit, then you play this on 4, then you can play Feral Spirit on 5 if you want, or whatever, you know what I mean? So it just depends on what cards you draw, lining up the overloads to get the curve. But a 7/7 on turn 4 is going to be really hard for people to deal with. I mean, if you think about aggro Shaman, like, they play the... Oh, the other thing is like, a very common curve is first turn Totemic into second turn Totem Golem into turn 3 2-drop, and then this lines up perfectly into that, into a 4. And then also having 3 on 5 is fine because you're going to play a lot of 3s, right? You're going to play Feral Spirits, you're going to play probably Tuskar Totemic, maybe Argent Horse Rider, so you're going to have a lot of 3s. So this card lines up great on 5. I mean, it means you can't play your Doomhammer till 6, but this is sort of another Doomhammer in the sense that, like, if this gets out and gets a few hits, that's basically game, right? So, like, it's just going to make the deck more consistent with some more sort of, I guess, mid to late game heavy hitters. This lines up versus other people's late game cards, and it's only 4 mana. So it just seems really strong, and I'm certainly going to be playing this in my deck. While Thing from Below and Master of Evolution and Halazil the Ascended are all things I kind of want to try in what I'm calling a hybrid Shaman, this card will go in every Shaman, I believe, like in every mid-range Shaman, every aggro Shaman. I think it's probably the best card from this group so far, and totally. Next card is Stormcrack, deal 4 damage to a minion, overload 1. I don't think this is probably not going to be played, mainly because we can compare it to Crackle. Crackle was only played in a burst deck. It was not played in a mid-range deck. So Crackle, generally you would Crackle things for 4 pretty frequently, because most, 75% of the time it would kill a 4 damage minion. This is slightly more consistent than Crackle, but you can't target the opponent's face. I would compare it more to like Shadow Bolt. It's basically 3 damage to 4, or 3 mana for 4 damage to a minion. That's basically Shadow Bolt. Shadow Bolt doesn't really get played. I don't think this will really get played. some chance it fits, but I don't think so. And last card is Primal Fusion. Give minions +1/+1 for each of your totems. I don't think this is good. If you have a whole bunch of totems, I'd rather play Flame Tongue. I mean, people are cutting Flame Tongues because they're worried about like not having a board. Um, I've said this a million times in all these reviews, but minions don't stay around. If you have a board, you're probably winning, and you don't need this to win even more. Like you can, like Flame Tongue's way better than this card. I think Flame Tongue's better than Evolve. Like Flame Tongue will be my card of choice for winning when I'm ahead on board. So probably won't play that. So quick recap of all the cards. Um, a lot of great cards. I think Halazel's at least good. I think the Thing from Below is probably good. The Eternal Sentinel's good. The Master of Evolution is good. I think the Flame Wraith Faceless is actually great. And that's great. You know, there's 5 new good cards. I think this is Blizzard trying, like Shaman's been this sort of second-class citizen for a while until the aggro Shaman, but I think Blizzard, their mentality is they want like mid-range and control Shamans to see play, but the mistake is they're creating cards that are, I guess, still better, like I'm looking to use these quote mid-range cards in a more aggressive deck still. You know, I'm not trying to play a control Shaman. I think control Shaman's still going to be not great. Now the one thing control Shaman does have, and maybe even maybe even aggro Shaman should be playing, is Hex. So Hex is a card that gains a lot of value because Silence is nerfed, and so this is another reason why Shaman is one of the best classes, and probably the best class in my mind, is that Ironbeak Owl was nerfed, Druid of the, or Keeper of the Grove was nerfed, Earthshock is still the same card and was previously played and still can be played. So Shaman has the best Silence card. Hex is a better than Silence card. It's like the best removal card. Big Game Hunter was nerfed, so now Shaman has Earthshock and Hex, which we can choose to play 1 or 2 of those cards in our aggro Shaman as well. Those are the best removal cards. Everyone else's removal cards got nerfed because Big Game Hunter's 5 mana and their silences are worse. So, yeah, I mean, Shaman's in a really good place, and yeah, I mean, I've said over and over through these reviews, I think that the metagame's going to be super aggressive, and I think Shaman will be in that place too. I think it's going to be aggro Shaman's going to be the deck that people are going to play, and it's going to be really good because if other people are playing aggressive decks but they don't have 4 mana 7/7s and you do, it seems pretty good. So let's go ahead and try to build a deck. I'm going to attempt to build what I'll call a hybrid Shaman. My guess is that the best deck will be a full aggro Shaman, but I also think like something a bit more hybrid is more fun and uses a lot more of the new cards, so for the purposes of this review I'm going to do that. So we're going to probably run this. Master of Evolution probably, maybe we can fit 1 Master of Evolution, I don't know, we'll see, that may come out. I'm just okay. Alright, so maybe something like this. So we have running one Argent Squire instead of two Leper Gnomes. Kind of slows it down a little bit, having one less one drop, but we're running the Eternal Sentinel in Flame Juggler instead of the Knife Juggler Haunted Creeper package that a lot of people were running. Cutting down to one Flame Tongue Totem because we only have we don't have quite as much early game boards, so drawing two of those could be a bit riskier. Running Feral Spirit still, Lava Burst still, running Totemic instead of Argent Horse Rider. We're running the Flame Wreath Faithless in there. This is basically replacing like a 1 and a 3 drop maybe. A lot of people were running 7 3 drops, so I'm running 6 3 drops and running one of these, and then I'm also running one less 1 drop to run one of these. And we're running Thing from Below instead of Crackle. We're running Doomhammer, and then we're running Halazeal. I'm not sure about the Halazeal, but something like this. This is what I would call like sort of a hybrid Shaman, right? So the Halazeal, does the Halazeal have enough synergy here? We have 2 Lava Bursts, 2 Lightning Bolts. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe the Halazeal's a little bit fancy. And maybe running another early game minion's better anyway. So we lost a Crackle. Maybe we could run one Ancestral Spirit as another early overload card. Or Stormforged Axe, actually. I like that better. So running one Stormforged Axe instead of a Crackle. We're running 2 Flame Wraith Faceless instead of a second Crackle and a second 1 drop. And then we're running Thing from Belows instead of a 3 drop and a Flame Tongue Totem in the more standard aggro Shaman decks. So something like this deck just seems really good to me. I mean, it's got tons of early board. It's got a lot of burst still. You know, we still have Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, and Rock Biter and Doomhammer, so we still have a lot of burst. And then we just have all these like big game minions that are going to be cheap, right? Like we're planning on playing Thing from Below for 4 mana most times, and we also have Flame Wraith Faceless, so we have 2 7/7s for 4 and 2 5/5 taunts for 4, basically making our deck a little more expensive. But then we also have the 2 Eternal Sentinels to give us more mana. So in general, the aggro Shaman deck is overloaded a lot, so like you don't want like 4 mana cards as much, but the fact that you now can remove those overloads a little bit can give you more chances to have the 4 mana and use it. So yeah, something like this would be the deck that I'm thinking of playing. Now, just real quick, since I do think Pure Face Shaman will be like one of the best decks, we could decide that the Thing from Below thing is too cutesy, and then in that case we could remove the Tuskar Totemics and do like something along the lines of like Argent Horse Rider, put the second square back in, maybe put the second Flame Tongue in. Something like this. So now we still have the same 7/1 drops we used to have. The 2 Flame Tongues is better with 2 Argent Squires. We're replacing the Haunted Creeper Knife Juggler package with Eternal Sentinel and Flame Juggler. We're replacing Crackle with a Stormforged Axe and a Flame Wreath Faceless, and we're replacing 1 3 drop with a Wreath Faceless. Now, I think this deck maybe looks even better, but this is the kind of deck I expect will be like, everyone's going to be complaining about this on Reddit within a week or whatever, I think. Well, there you have it. That's the end of my part 9 of the Whispers of the Old God review, which is Shaman. I still have 2 more videos to go. Part 10 will be Warlock cards, which will be my next one, and then the final one will be Warrior cards. So look forward to those, and thanks for watching this video.